I am Gina.
I am Julia.
I cannot believe that I actually do this. Roll out of bed and actually put myself on the tubes, on the YouTubes, without doing my hair, without, well, you see.
The YouTubes.
Anyway.
Okay, so we
Wait, this is Scenes from the Couch.
Scenes from the Couch. So we departed from our list of the film festival movies of the week because just after we reviewed the last film, which was Le Samurai, if you had seen our review, we were commenting that one of our first thoughts when we saw Alain appear on the screen was that he was very similar to the Jude Law but the Jude Law, look in The Talented Mr. Ripley, where Jude Law is also one of the most beautiful men in the world. And that's the same thought had struck us, and we were like, another most beautiful man in the world, even more beautiful.
Yeah,
and
we thought this guy was more beautiful than Jude Law even.
So
sure.
we were referencing The Talented Mr. Ripley and Jude Law, and then after we finished our review, I was looking at more information about him and found out that in 1960, which was 6 years before The Samurai, he played in a French version of The Talented Mr. Ripley as the other character, not as the Jude Law character, but as the Matt Damon character, which was kind of mind-blowing. Like, what a weird coincidence that we would be thinking that. And so therefore we had to watch that movie. So that's what we watched. We watched the name of, it's a strange name that they gave it, but it's based on the same book, The Talented Mr. Ripley. It's called Purple Noon. And like I said, it came out in 1960. And he played the villain as opposed to the one who in The Talented Mr. Ripley was, the target. And interestingly enough, the guy who played the target, who was the actual Jude Law character in this French version, looked not in a less attractive way, but similar to Jude Law. Like, these characters looked similar to the American version. Like, I don't know how the book describes them, but it must say something about like them, the handsomest men in the world. So they were looking for the top of the heap, and that's why they cast them that way. So
the storyline is different though.
Yeah, they definitely, like, I would have to read the book to know what even happened in the book, but they definitely departed in a bunch of ways in the two different versions. It was ultimately essentially the same story, but they took a lot of different turns. And presented it differently. And
yeah, the American one, he's murdered at the end basically, and in this French version he's murdered right away in the first 20 minutes or so of the movie.
Yeah.
And then you piece together what is happening. Well, you see him getting away with it and trying to get away with it, which ultimately he does not get away with it.
Which is the same as probably the book and also definitely the American version. He doesn't get away. Just when you think he's going to get away, at the very last minute, it's just before the credits roll, you find out he's one last little, thing that happened, and all of a sudden he's caught. So
yeah, but I don't remember.
You're kind of pulling for him in a way to kind of succeed, maybe not 100%, because he is a villain, but then he doesn't. And it's sort of, it's a good kind of, it's well ended in both of them.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, just that the American version, I don't remember how he gets caught. I know in the French version, they find the body being pulled behind in the boat. I don't believe that was in the American version.
No. Friends, he was on a ship, and friends that they knew in common recognized him as the one who was masquerading.
That's the American one? That's how he's caught? Okay.
Yeah, which is, again, just before the credits roll, so you're like, right up until the last moment, you think he's going to get away with it because he's very slippery. He's very clever and slippery, and he just kind of finds his way out of every possible, trap he might end up in where the cops will figure him out. So it's a fun movie. I just have to say, though, that as much as we wanted to see it specifically for him because he's so beautiful. I felt like he definitely was a better looking guy in Le Samurai, which was in black and white, and he was in, suits and a 1960s hat the whole time, looking his absolute dastardly best. Whereas in this 1960s version, I think it was not, the color wasn't really very good. There was a lot of really harsh, overly red faces from their tans and kind of greasy looking sweat. And it was, I don't know why he didn't look his best.
Well,
Nobody looked their best.
He hadn't fully reached his peak yet.
Plus, he was also a little bit young and scrawny, kind of like the Robert De Niro character in Mean Streets, where he was a little too young and skinny to have filled out to his, his full greatness that, in his later movies, he looked a lot more masculine and filled out, where he was just kind of a scrawny punk in Mean Streets. And this guy wasn't a scrawny punk, but he was scrawny.
Yeah.
So he lacked some of the smoldering amazingness that came later. So that's about all I have to say about that. I also think that the American version was slicker. It was just better production values, I think.
Yeah. But this guy, I mean, he actually, Julie and I were obsessed with David Bowie for many, many years, especially through our teenage years. We were obsessed with him. And I think Alain had some very similar qualities in this movie because he was so, thin and handsome and with this beautiful jawline, a slightly androgynous, right? Like really pretty. I mean, He was a pretty guy too.
Plus,
but
his teeth were a little tiny bit on the bad side, almost like David Bowie's.
And we like that.
Yeah, so there was, when he smiled, there was a little bit of that kind of look.
Why can't I look better with crooked teeth? My snaggletooth just really, it doesn't add charm. So, but for some reason, like we didn't like it when David Bowie got his veneers.
No.
It ruined his look.
I'm just going to say across the board that all actors and actresses and also people in real life who get veneers do not improve their look. It's instantly recognizable as chiclets. It does not look natural. It doesn't
looks
improve
fake.
the smile or the face. And if you're going to do anything, maybe get braces or something like that, but don't put an extra layer of fake teeth over the top of your real teeth because it just makes you look like you have a mouthful of chiclets.
Yeah, and also dentures. It makes you look like you have dentures.
It's also similar to dentures.
It's kind of a little bit, now I'm not saying across the board here, but kind of like facelifts in the sense that, if they're not done perfectly right, if they're not done with an aesthetic surgeon, I mean, just the fact that it's obvious if someone's had a facelift, it ages them sometimes because why are you having a facelift unless you are older, right? So it kind of, like, sometimes it doesn't work. So the same with the veneers. It creates this look of, there's something rotten underneath. These are fake. You've lost your teeth. Like, it just all around is not great. Don't do Invisalign either because they've now discovered that when you use Invisalign that your gums recede. So if you're going to straighten your teeth, it's probably going to have to be braces.
Getting back to the movie,
Yes.
I think if we'd seen enough to know, or maybe just did a little more research, if we wanted to just purely see another movie that was, Alain Delon looking beautiful, that there were probably some other better movies we could have chosen. This one was really more just because of the incredible
because we were talking about Jude Law
of talking about him as being similar to that other movie. So then it just was like, well, we have to see it.
It was
now.
the beauty of Jude Law. That's what the comparison.
Yeah.
We were like, that Jude Law was one of the most beautiful in that movie.
It was just an incredible coincidence that we were
Yeah.
talking about that. Unbeknownst to us, he had been in that very same French version of the movie. That's all.
Okay. We're seeing Sinners later in the theater. today in a couple hours. So we will report on Sinners. I am really nervous about this. I don't do well with horror anymore. So I don't know. I hope I can get through it.
And next up, we're going to try to watch, it's a cult classic, but it's a comedy, spoof, many spoofs, the Kentucky Fried Movie from 1977. We'll see how that goes.
Okay, sounds good. So would I recommend this movie? Yes. I give it 4 stars, maybe 5 stars. I mean, I really liked it. I think not having watched the Hollywood version, I might have liked it more if I wasn't comparing the entire time. But I still love watching that man on screen. He's so beautiful. So
I would only give it 2 stars. I just thought that the production values, the color, the quality of the visuals just did not do him justice at all. It was just a lot of harsh red, shiny, overexposed. Just it somehow they just didn't give him good lighting or angles, and he was always just looking sunburnt and shiny, and it really didn't capture his best.
I disagree.
And also, I think the main reason to watch it is if you're an Alain Delon fan and you've seen The Talented Mr. Ripley, and you want to kind of see the interesting comparison of different movies doing the same movie at different times by different directors, and that's always interesting. I've done that before, where I've read a book and I've seen like 6 different versions of the movies depicting that book, and kind of compared like which one did it best, or which one got the character of this one right but not that one. And that's a very interesting exercise. But on its own, I mean, it was highly rated on Rotten Tomatoes. I personally just didn't think that they did right by him in this movie. It was his first film, by the way. It was, I think he'd been in another one, but this is his first mainstream movie that kind of launched his career.
I recommend it.
All right.
Okay. All right, we gotta go. See you later.
On to the next movie.
Bye.